You're now watching the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Mike Missanelli podcast as we open a beautiful spring week here in the Delaware Valley. I'm finally back from vacation doing the show sponsored by the great people from BetRivers. As you can see right behind me, it says BetRivers. It might come off as a backwards image, but it really does say River. So there you go. No, it really says BetRivers. And this is a very important time for you to download the app because BetRivers has some primo NBA conference finals odds. If you would like to, if you think the Boston Celtics are going to romp their way to the NBA finals, it will only cost you minus $1,000. So again, I always look at these bets like, can you lose that bet? Can the Indiana Pacers really beat the Celtics? So would you bet $2,000 to win 1,000? To me, that's a no-brainer, right? You bet $10,000 to win 5,000. Would you do that? I mean, I don't know. To me, there's no way in my mind that the Indiana Pacers are going to win this series. Now, Boston may have a couple of those games where they mess around and Indiana steals a couple games, but they're not going to win the overall series. This is Boston's year. Now, when they get to the NBA Finals, we'll see if they can handle either one of those teams, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But let's start off here on the Mike Missanelli podcast, brought to you by BetRivers, with the big story in Philadelphia, which has been underplayed. It's been underplayed because it's amazing. The Phillies win on a regular basis. And I can remember this happening just a couple of times in Philadelphia sports history. I remember the Flyers way back when. You knew they were going to win every game. You knew the Sixers in that big year with Allen Iverson that they were going to win every game. You just had this feel. And so winning isn't as special. And we're kind of taking it for granted. So let's look at what the Phillies are right now. They are tied with the best start in team history, 34-14. The two teams that they're tied with the best start in history are, if you remember, not that long ago, the 1993 Phillies got off to a monster start. So that was one team they're tied with. That team was 34-14 in their first 48 games. And then we have to go back to 1976. This was a team special to my heart. I'll tell you why. Because this started the resurgence of Philly baseball. They finally made some savvy trades. They finally got some prospects that were ready to really perform at a high major league level. And I fell in love with this. I was a kid. I was playing baseball. That was in the throes of my young baseball career. So I was following that team very closely. And I have a certain fondness. So for the people who lived through that resurgence, 76, 77, 78, where they just couldn't get past the Dodgers or the Cincinnati Reds, but they were there. They dominated the regular season. Here was your starting lineup in 1976. They brought back Dick Allen to be the starting first baseman. This was the big story. He was at the end of his career. He really wasn't a hitter like he was in the past, but they brought him back and like he had finally, calmed down and become this really good baseball citizen. So it was like a really interesting story that they brought him back. I think before they had Richie Hebner, maybe, and Allen replaced him. And so the infield, and this is the guy that really started the resurgence of Philly baseball because he brought attitude. The second baseman was Dave Cash. They got him for the Pittsburgh Pirates. I forget who they traded him for, but he came with this attitude, this cocky attitude. And he was the guy that year who made up the slogan, "Yes, we can." And in Philadelphia, you go, "Yes, we can." Wait, we win? Win something? And in 1976, he started that resurgence. So you had Dick Allen at first, Dave Cash at second base. Larry Bowa was the shortstop, now coming into his own as a really good player. And Mike Schmidt, the third baseman. Bob Boone was the catcher. Now you go to the outfield. We had Greg Luzinski in his heyday when he was whacking home runs. Gary Maddox in center field, who they acquired from the San Francisco Giants. And they had a kind of a platoon in right field. But the primary starter was Jay Johnstone, who had a monster year. I think he hit over 300 that year. And then the backup players, they had these veteran players that Paul Owens, who was called the Pope, he was the general manager. He brought in guys like Bobby Tolan, a left-handed hitting outfielder, Ollie Brown, downtown Ollie Brown, who was a pinch hit machine. He had home runs as a pinch hitter. Because Tim McCarver was the backup catcher. But he was important because he was the only guy that caught Steve Carlton. They were buddies. Steve Carlton trusted him. So every time Steve Carlton pitched, Tim McCarver was the catcher. And then there were guys like Tommy Hutton, who was a backup first baseman, a little left-handed hitter, good hitter. And then you had Jerry Martin, who was a young, spare outfielder. And you had a backup infielder named Terry Harmon. So now their pitching staff. Carlton was the guy everybody looked at. But they had depth in the pitching staff that came kind of from nowhere. Just like in 93. Jim Cott, who was about 100 years old, was still a formidable pitcher. They had Jim Lomborg, another veteran right-handed pitcher who was a star with the Red Sox, who pitched very well for the Phillies. Larry Christensen, young, hard-throwing right-hander, and a little left-hander named Tommy Underwood. That was a pretty good staff that carried that team through. Their relief pitching was really good. Tug, Ron Reed, Gene Garber, Wayne Twitchell, and two guys, Ron Schuler and left-hander named Randy Lurch. That was a pretty good team. When I went back to that team, I said, that team started the resurgence of Philadelphia baseball. So right now, the Phillies at 34-14 are tied with the best start in team history. Let me give you the odds to win the World Series, because in Vegas, they're not really sold, and they're not really sold for a reason. The odds to win the World Series, Dodgers are plus 300, prohibitive favorite, followed by the Braves at plus 550, followed by the Yankees at plus 800, followed by the Orioles at plus 800, and then the Phillies are next on the list at plus 950. Now, we'll see if that'll change. Now, why is that with the Phillies at 34-14? Well, we mentioned it in our last podcast. They haven't played anybody. And one of the reasons I'm bored watching the Phillies is because I can't stand stink-ass baseball teams. I just can't stand to watch the way bad teams play. And we just had an example of it where the Phillies swept the Nationals. I'm going, oh, my God. The Phillies are as good as the Nationals are bad. Bad teams have no idea how to win. They make the silliest mistakes, whether it's defensive, whatever. They don't come up with timely hits. They don't situationally hit. The Nationals are a bad team. And most of the teams the Phillies have played this year have been bad teams. Now, I don't want to dampen your enthusiasm here, but only 3 of the 48 games they have played so far this year at 34-14, only 3 of them were against teams above 500. They're getting the benefit of a bad schedule early on. They have a plus 80 run differential. That's second to the Dodgers. But again, their strength of schedule is 29th in the league. It'll start to get serious a little bit, maybe tonight when they open a series against the World Series champion Texas Rangers. But the Rangers are playing 500 ball right now. So I look at this team and I go, oh, they're really good. And I said at the start of the year, they're good. Now, these people saying, well, they're a solid lineup. When you look at their lineup, they're a solid lineup, and they've got really good pitching, which is dominating the league right now, starting-wise. What do they need to close the deal? Is the trade deadline's coming up? Well, it's obvious. They need probably another right-handed, reliable back-end relief pitcher, and they could probably use a right-handed outfield bat. Now, interestingly enough, there are people calling to keep Cody Clemens on the roster. He's hit well. He's got a lot of big hits. And I go, well, what do you do to replace? Like, who goes down if you have Cody Clemens? People, well, Pache. Now, this is the difference between people thinking baseball and looking at something on paper. Pache's a right-handed hitting outfielder. Cody Clemens is a left-handed hitter hitting utility player. He's not a corner outfield. He can't play outfield on an everyday basis, because then you're going to complain about how bad he is defensively in the outfield. So he can fill in at first. Maybe you could play him at second base every now and then. But where would he stay on the roster and send down somebody? There's unfortunately for the kid, there's no way that you can keep him up here. So I don't know what people talk about. I think people get carried away. Well, he's hitting him. He has to stay. Well, where? Where does he stay? You got too many left-handed hitters right now in the outfield. So you got to keep Pache. And the idea is you improve the Pache slot. Not that Cody Clemens should replace Pache. You need a right-handed bat that's better than Pache, and maybe you sacrifice a little bit of defense in that kind of situation. All right, so your Phils, as we roll into the summer, are giving you reasons to smile. It's always good when you have a contending baseball team, man. And the only thing I look at is, okay, when they get tested, I go, how many good teams are in this league, though? They're playing on these teams below 500. How many teams are any good in the National League? The Dodgers are good. The Braves are good. That's it. So they could roll through this whole summer. And are they better than the Braves is the question. Could they win that division and get a better playoff slot? That's the thing you got to look at. Right now, it's the Phillies, it's the Dodgers, it's the Braves. That's it. And in the American League, it's a little different when you have the Yankees and you have the Orioles and you have the defending champions, and then you have some other teams that are leaking up there, like the Red Sox are playing well. So take care of business, and let's see. I don't have any complaints. At this moment, I do not have any complaints. I've been a complainer about Castellanos. I don't believe that Castellanos will catch fire. I believe that's what he is right now. I hope Rojas can stay at 230. If he stays at 230, okay, I was wrong about keeping him up here instead of getting him to learn how to hit in AAA. But I still look at him and I go, your swing is too long. Your swing is too violent. There's no need for you to have that big of a swing with a big bat. I don't get it. Where you think you're a power hitter. So that's my only complaint. Those two guys, Rojas, Castellanos. Other than that, I have no complaints about anything they're doing right now. All right. Let's move on to the Sixers. In the context of the NBA playoffs, which I've loved, by the way. Here, it's funny. There's this philosophy on how you build an NBA team that Daryl Morey has that I don't agree with. Now, I used to think highly of him. I no longer think highly of him because he's always after 3 stars. I think the NBA has shown you a transition this year that youth wins, and youth that fits wins, and youth that plays hard wins, and guys off the bench fit into roles wins. Except for the Boston Celtics, which are top heavy, but they play team basketball. And the reason why the Celtics win, yeah, they have Tatum and Brown, but their role players are excellent. And all of them do their job, from Derek White to that little guard they bring off the bench. Porzingis isn't even playing. But Derek White, guys like Al Horford, they're still squeezing minutes out of guys like Al Horford. Peyton Pritchard has played really well. Those guys are the glue of what makes the Boston Celtics. And when you look around, okay, they're going to play the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers aren't a great team. They took advantage of a hobbled New York Knicks team. And we'll talk about that in a second, that the fallout with the Knicks. And if you're a Knicks fan, how you're supposed to perceive that fallout. But when you look at the teams, they're all tied together and they all play hard. The Indiana Pacers are young and they push the pace. And every one of them does their job. Yeah, their best player is Halliburton, but Halliburton also defers to a lot of guys who do their job. It's a pleasure watching that team play. It's a pleasure watching the Minnesota Timberwolves play. Those guys are connected at the hip. Defensively, they have a great player, and they have a guy, Anthony Towns, Cat, who does his job, but the rest of them just play hard. And this is the thing that I think Daryl Morey is missing. The way you build a team now is with youth that connects and not 3 stars. So when he's going to go out and get Paul George or whoever he's going to come up with, to me, it's just you're recycling the same formula that, in my view, no longer works, because that leaves you depleted with role players. If you're going to focus on 3 stars, 2 things bad can happen, and they're older stars. Number one, they're not going to play hard enough during a regular season. They're going to find a way to take time off, which doesn't give you a primo position in the pecking order in the NBA playoffs. And number 2, what will they have left in the playoffs? And we've seen these old players crash and burn in the playoffs when he really gets into the nitty-gritty. But with that said, let's look at what the Sixers are right now. Because they have a lot of guys, they have to consider whether they want to resign. Right now, they only have 4 players under contract, and one of them is Paul Reed, who now they can easily zip out of here because that money's not guaranteed because the Sixers didn't get into the second round of the playoffs. So right now, the guys that are definites are Ricky Council, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid. Now you got to decide you're going to fill in a roster, right? What do? You reshuffle the deck. You are obviously going to allow spots for a couple of trades. But here are the guys that you'll have to make decisions on whether you want to bring him back or not. So I'll bring producer Darren in here for a little help. There are 5 guys that are at the top of the list on whether your decision is going to be more difficult to keep or not. So let's start with Kelly Oubre.
All right.
You're bringing Kelly Oubre back.
Yes. Yeah, you got to put some people on the roster. So him, I'll bring.
He's going to cost you a lot of money.
They have a lot of money, and there's nobody out there that's going to come here that they're going to spend.
All right, so Oubre stayed.
Be honest about that.
Okay. I the majority of people that are listening to this will probably agree with that. I do not. I do not agree with it. I don't trust him. I think he has shown a profile in this league where he breaks your heart, and he's kind of a con. So when he plays well, he played well this year based on that he needs a contract.
Yeah.
Once you get him a contract, there's flaws that come out. And if there weren't flaws, he wouldn't have been traded 4 times. So I would say this is a cautionary tale, and I would stay away from him, but I know I'm in the minority because I've already professed a dislike for Kelly Oubre. I don't like the way he does business. There's something creepy about the guy, in my view. All right, let's move on.
I understand. I see that. And I can buy that. But let's go through the other 4, and then I'll preface what
Kyle Lowry.
I love him, Philly guy. He doesn't have a whole lot left. I think he gave it all this year, so no. He's going to cost
all right, go on Kyle Lowry. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Paul Reed.
No, enough with Paul Reed.
Can you get a backup?
Enough with this guy. Do you ever? There's a story. There's a story about Tony Danza. All right, Tony Danza had a show. It's like his last go around in television. All right, the whole show's pre-production is done. It's all set up. At the end, they bring the one guy in, Rory Rorenstein or something, that does the Ray Romano show. They said, we want to get his final opinion before the show, right? He comes in, the whole show staff is there after 8-10 months of building the show up. They're ready to shoot the pilot. He comes in, he hears the presentation. He says, Tony Danza, enough with this guy, and walks out of the office. Killed the show, killed everything right there. So, Mike, Paul Reed, enough with this guy.
Right. You had to go to a story about Tony Danza to come up with that answer?
That's a great story, though. It's a great story.
It wasn't that good, to be honest with you. All right, so Paul Reed, go. Okay? Let's go with Nick, or as he's known now, for reasons that are unclear to me, Nico. His whole career has been Nick, but now he's Nico. So, Nick Batum.
No, he got his one game out.
No, you're saying no. Most people, again, would say
you
got to bring back Kelly Oubre and Nick Batum. I kind of agree with you. I think you run out of time with guys, and you make the mistake of saying they're going to help you again. Maybe not. All right, so no. All right, let's go to campaign.
You know, some people he looks like a cartoon character when he shoots the ball. He looks like somebody drew him. What is that shot? What is that? No, I can't look at that. I can't have that face looking at that face.
You don't want him because you can't look at him.
He's awkward. I don't need awkward.
No, I'm keeping campaign. I don't think you can do. Listen, he's a backup point guard. He's fine. That's a body you can add to the roster. You're gonna find another guy like campaign. What's the difference? Like, you have him here, he's not gonna cost you that much money. I'm gonna keep campaign as a backup point guard, whether he's a second string or a third string. He's a good guy to have on your bench. Okay, so now let's go to KJ Martin.
You know, I would go.
Okay, that took you time to think about.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. They got to put bodies on this roster, but
what were you thinking about? Like, what does he give you?
Nothing.
All right.
I'm trying to find a reason for these guys, Mike. All of them should really
you
go.
Have to find reasons. The NBA could be a shuffled deck. You don't have to find reason to keep guys.
And it's going to have to be. But that does preface what I was going to say about Oubre, in that all these other guys really have no chance in staying, I don't think. So, like, Oubre is the only one that's worth keeping on the roster. He's going to be a little pricey, but they have extra money right now.
You're going to pay Kelly Oubre $20+ million? Seriously?
Mike, 90% of
No,
NBA
it's not.
contracts
Forget
are
90%.
undeserved.
I'm asking you. You're going to pay him $20 million?
Me? No. Maury?
All right. Well,
What's
I'm
his
asking
name?
you. I'm not
In the
asking.
perch? Yeah.
I'm not asking you, Daryl Morey, through you. There's no medium here. All right. Next two. The last two. Mo Bamba.
Right. I haven't seen enough of Mo Bamba. Can I say that?
What does that
It means
mean?
I don't know.
Does it mean you want to see more of him or not? Or less?
I'll see less. I've seen enough to know.
All right. So he goes. All right. And finally, Anthony Melton.
See, he's a guy that I think they should keep. He's athletic. I like Melton a little bit. He doesn't play. He was hurt a lot this year, right? So at least at the end. But no, I would keep Melton.
I would not. You don't mess around with back injuries. Okay,
that's a good point.
He couldn't play at all. All right. When you have a back problem, you're always going to have a back problem. So I unfortunately have to move on from him too, which means you're going to have to reshuffle a deck. Now, can you reshuffle a deck enough unless you make a major trade to make this team a championship contender when you're now facing the likes of Boston, Indiana, and the New York Knicks, who are going to be a lot better next year when everybody's healthy? So what is the future of the Sixers? I know they're chasing. Here's Maury's thing. I don't think he thinks there's a future. And I think he has to try to make his team interesting for fans to buy in. And that's the reason he'll chase another star. He is not in a position in his career to build a team from youth because he's not going to keep his job. So that's what you got with the 76ers. Will they be interesting if Paul George comes to town? Yeah, I guess. Will it be interesting if another star comes to? I guess. Will they be good enough to contend with what the East is now? And I say no. All right, so there you go with the 76ers for today. Let's move on to the NBA Conference Finals. I turned into a New York Knicks fan. I don't understand the people here who look at a team and say, I hate them because they're New York and they got these celebrities that come to the court. What the freak does that matter? Do you not see a team that played hard? Wouldn't you not like to watch that team, if it was yours, every night play hard? As undermanned as they were, missing 3 starters, missing a top bench guy, 2 of the guys they were trying to survive the series. 2 of their guys hurt. One with an abdominal strain, Josh Hart, and the other one half a leg, and then he breaks his hand. And there are people in New York who are devastated by the fact that the Knicks lost. Are you kidding me? I have a little secret to tell you. I bet heavy on the Indiana Pacers in Game 7. Rock the world heavy on the Indiana Pacers because in Game 7, no matter where they play it, they could play it in Spike Lee's living room. And the Knicks weren't going to have enough to outlast a team that had younger legs. And so I look at the Knicks and I go, man, that was pretty good effort. If I'm a Knicks fan, I can't be disappointed with what they did. That was an amazing run they made. They were what now? Again, will this coach really drives them hard? He, in a lot of ways, is the Mike Keenan of the NBA, where you drive him, and then you got to have players that will buy in. Eventually, will some of those players stop buying in? They've got to re-sign that Hartenstein, who came out of nowhere to be a viable player, because now he's a free agent, and somebody's going to really want that guy. And they're going to overpay to get that guy because he does dirty work. But the framework of the New York Knicks is pretty good. Next year, they'll get back Mitchell Robinson. They'll get back Anunoby. They'll get back Bogdanovich. And they'll have a healthier team. They're good. And they're well coached. So I really like the Knicks. So if you're looking at now what the Celtics and the Pacers are, I didn't bet the game, but I bet this. I looked at the over-under on our BetRivers app. Tyrese Halliburton, who's their best player, tonight has an over-under point total of 19.5. Now, that tells me one thing. Boston's going to defend the bejesus out of my man tonight. He's going to get a little out of sorts, and I bet the under. What do you think of that bet, Darren?
I would. That's a good bet, actually. Because I think that's Boston's key.
He'll score more than 19.5, and that's just what they want you to think. Well, I'm smarter than those freaking people in Vegas. And I know you're setting me up. That's an under if I ever saw it.
That's how
All
Boston
right.
would attack. I believe it. You're right.
Celtics 10-point favorite in game one. I don't know. You look at it and go, that's logical to think that Boston being rested, Indiana coming off mayhem. I look at it the other way around. I think the Indiana covers because Boston, it has been inactive. And it's a home game one, and I don't know if they're going to be at their sharpest. Rest in the NBA playoffs doesn't exactly mean you stay sharp. So I think Indiana will come in with a lot of adrenaline and keep it close for a while. So I like the Pacers to cover the 10 tonight because it's another setup line. They want you. They're begging you. Celtics minus 10, they're going to romp tonight. They might win by 20. But I look at it like it's the other way. That's just the way I do things on with bets. On the money line, again, the Celtics are minus 1,000. The Timberwolves and the Mavericks, a very interesting series. A lot of people say that series doesn't have much glamour. It probably doesn't, except you got two stars. You got Anthony Edwards, who a lot of people I don't think have seen enough of yet. And, of course, you got Luka, who's kind of ailing, but he's obviously they got star power in that series. So the Wolves are favored at minus 180 in this series. And to me, it's a toss-up. I think the Timberwolves are going to play for the NBA title and play Boston, and which means if the Celtics don't win this NBA title, they have the most pressure of any team because now they're expected to win. Past disappointments the last couple of years, they're playing the Timberwolves. They've got to win the NBA championship. And if they don't, it might cost the coach his job. And he's had a pretty good record as the coach, Joe Mazzulla, of the Boston Celtics. Celtics, big time pressure to win it all this year. All right. During the weekend, I was glued to TV, man. I love watching TV. I love watching the NBA, and I love watching golf, especially when it's a major. And it was won by Xander Schauffele. And surprisingly, because he really hasn't been able to close a deal very much in his career. He's finished second a lot of times, but he held on a charge by Bryson DeChambeau. But the big story, of course, was the Scottie Scheffler dilemma, where he shows up Friday at Valhalla in Louisville, Kentucky. And there was an accident that killed a man. It was a vendor worker, was trying to cross the street, was hit by a bus that was a transport bus that were bringing in fans. Very tragic. So they had the entrance kind of locked down. The Louisville police did. Now, there's no officer body cam film of this, conveniently. I don't know what Scottie Scheffler did, but here's what my guess is. He was in this traffic jam where police weren't letting anybody by. He saw the entrance where he had to go as a player, and I believe he panicked. I believe that oh my God, I got this routine. I got my tee off time is at 8:30. I got to get in there. I got to go through my workout. I got to do that. I think he panicked. And in panicking, I think he thought he could cut corners. And so he got out of line, tried to sneak his way into the parking lot when he was stopped by a police officer. This is what I think. It's logical to think this now. The police officer, I then believe, overreacted. He saw it was somebody like it wasn't. Scottie Scheffler was going to his job. This job, unfortunately, you can't be late. Like any other job, you could go, hey, I'm going to the traffic jam. Sorry, I'm 10 minutes late. In golf, you can't. So he's panicking. I'm like, God, this is amazing. Am I going to miss my tee off time? Let's see, panic. And I believe the panic drove him to do that. Now, out of nowhere, the cop comes and latches onto the car. Scottie at that point should have stopped right then. Got out of the car and explained the situation. If the police officer would have allowed him to explain the situation. Oh, I'm sorry, officer. I didn't mean to do that. I'm a pro golfer. I'm in the tournament. My tee off time is starting. At that point, it's up to the cop to go, okay, well, what's your name? And then he verifies it with some official at Valhalla. Go, okay, listen, Mr. Scheffler, we're going to let you off with a warning here. Don't ever try to do that again. You're putting people's lives in danger if you do something like that. And that would have been the perfect compromise. Instead, the cop gets him out of the car and handcuffs him. Now, again, I don't know how culpable or belligerent or forceful Scottie Scheffler was, whether he ignored the order to stop or not. And that's the whole key. If he did that, he's definitely wrong. And he should get a ticket of some sort and some kind of fine. But there's a better way to handle that resolution. The cops should know that there's a pro tournament going on here, and maybe it's a golfer. So I see. I don't get the conflict resolution sometimes where I look at it and go, it's real. That was really a simple thing. All he had to do was explain why he tried to do that. I'm sorry. I really apologize, but you understand, I have a tea tie. I gotta get in there. Blah, blah, blah. And then the cop, if he had an ounce of decency, would say, "Okay, I'm gonna check your story out." And check the story out and go, "All right, I'm gonna let you off with a warning, or I'm gonna give you a citation for doing that." But come on, man. You can't turn it into a felony charge, can it? Where you handcuff the guy and you get him at the police station? It's really bizarre. I don't understand how it would get to that point. And I know there are people out there going, well, Mike, anybody else that would have done the same thing. Yeah, but he's not anybody else. And I'm not saying that he is like entitled to break the law. What I'm saying is he's trying to get to his job, and all that could have resolved it was a conversation. And there wasn't any conversation. So let me bring Darren in here. Darren, what do you think?
I thought the whole time, I'm like, this is a situation that's gone way off the rails, way too easily. Yeah, there probably was no discretion by the cop. I don't know that, but I don't understand how something. I know the entire area was on high alert. I get it. But, how on earth does something like that? I don't know that anybody any regular person in any other situation similar would be hauled off to jail and charged with a second-degree felony. It was just, I can't imagine. Look, I don't know Scotty Scheffler personally. I watched him on Full Swing. I watched him in any interviews. He's literally a guy who preaches. They even talked about it after his first round about he is capable, and I saw it at the Masters live. He is capable of physically pulling his blood pressure down and calming himself down in situations. Like, that's what has made him successful in his life. He's not a hot-headed guy. Is there anything about him that you think he would spurt off to a cop and be like, "Hey, I'm a golfer. Let me go through here"?
But I do think he panicked in trying to get in. Yeah,
that's
because he felt that he was going to be delayed here. It was going to mess up. He was going to be late for his tee time and get disqualified from the tournament. All those thoughts probably went through his head. So what I'm saying is there should have been some perspective,
right?
And the perspective would have cured the whole thing, whether he was wrong or not. If he was wrong, he should have absolutely apologized right on the spot, but explain the situation. And I apparently did not get a chance to explain it. So I tweeted out, here's how it should have gone. Officer, the Scott Scheffler goes, so I'm sorry, officer. I'm a professional golfer here. My tee-off time is early. I'm just trying to get in the course. I thought that I could just get into this gate here. I really apologize, blah, blah, blah. Officer, okay, let me call into Valhalla to verify. They got a guy out here says he's in the tournament. He's trying to get into the gate. His name is Scotty Scheffler. He said, yeah, he's leading the frickin' tournament. Yeah. He's a golfer here. Okay. All right, Mr. Scheffler. Listen, I'm going to let you go this time, but in the future, don't interfere with a police detour by ignoring the detour. Okay? Scotty, I'm really sorry. It will never happen again. Conflict resolved. Instead, it did not resolve. Okay. Anyway, Xander Schauffele wins the tournament. He had a bunch of his friends there. He had his wife there, his brother and his sister-in-law, the whole bit. His father wasn't there, nor was his mother. His father was in Hawaii. His father is living in a storage trailer in Hawaii, overseeing a project that he's trying to build for his family in Hawaii, in Maui, a 22-acre farm that's going to be the Scheffler secluded home. And
estate,
he's actually
the Scheffler estate.
He's like the general contractor, and he's living in this storage unit. And that's how he found out. He actually went to a friend's. He doesn't have any TV. He had to go to somebody's house to actually watch the end of the tournament. Isn't it nice to have a father who's wealthy enough? I'm going to buy this 22-acre. I'm going to build this Scheffler enclave in Hawaii.
Schauffele estate. I made the same mistake.
Where did I go wrong? Where did I go wrong? How come I don't have a father who's got a project in Hawaii where the whole Missanelli clan can live happily ever after to the sounds of nature? Like, what happened? Yeah, I don't know. My father was a TV repairman who started off putting antennas on roofs. That's what he did. But I digress. Congratulations to Scotty Scheffler. So everybody have a great rest of the day. Should be a really nice warm week back in the Delaware Valley. Thanks for listening to the show. Don't forget to tell your friends and neighbors about the Mike Missanelli podcast. All you got to do is subscribe for free, and it'll come to your inbox every time we do a podcast. Don't forget you can reach me. Email mike@mikemiss.com, and also Twitter, MikeMiss25. And if you want a personal shout out, just go to Cameo. That's right, Cameo, cameo.com. Put my name in there. I can give you a personal shout out. Last week I did a couple when I was on vacation for the people. I love doing them. I love giving a personal shout out to people for any occasion. Usually people do it with birthdays, Mother's Day. I did a couple greetings. And it's really fun for me. I love touching base with the people where I can go out and actually communicate with them and bond with them. So take advantage of that. And, of course, big wine season coming up at the winery that I'm a part owner of. It's called Natali Vineyards. It's in Cape May Courthouse, New Jersey. If you're headed down the shore Memorial Day weekend, you don't have anything to do on a Saturday, maybe. I don't know. The weather's a little inclement. Get over to the winery and say hello from me and have a glass of wine and say, Mike told me to sample the Nono's Cellar Red. All right, there you go. A little recommendation. For Darren, I'm Mike. Thanks for listening, everybody, and watching, and we'll talk to you later this week. Bye-bye.